This is the Chapter 10 test review. Please follow along, writing down everything that is written down in this review. This review may be used on your test. For questions 1 and 2, you're going to be asked to graph the function and then to compare the graph with the graph of y equals x squared. So starting with number 1, you can do these in your calculator. There is nothing wrong with that. Or you can create a table and then check with your calculator. So we're going to create an XY table. And we're going to pick just a couple of points. I'm going to pick -2, 0, and 2. And you want to pick at least 3 points, and if things don't seem to be mirroring on either side, you might choose some more, but this one will. So when we plug a -2 into x squared, -2 squared is 4. 1/4 times 4 is 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0. 0 squared is 0, and 1/4 times 0 is 0. So 0 minus 1 is -1. And then 2 squared is 4. 1/4 of 4 is 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0. And so this does mirror, and so you're going to have a point at 0, -1, -2, 0, and 2, 0. This is a parabola, so it's going to be a U-shaped graph. So that is the graph that you have. Now you're going to compare it with the graph of y equals x squared. You don't have to graph y equals x squared on here, although you can if it helps you. But what you need to know is that because of the fraction in front of the x squared, we call that a vertical shrink. It would be a vertical stretch if the number in front of the x squared was greater than 1. And we call it a downward translation because it's below the x-axis, where the vertex is. For number 2, I'm going to draw this a little bit sideways, or I can draw it over here. We have our x and our y. Okay. For this one, I'm going to pick -1, 0, and 1. And again, you can graph this in your graphing calculator. -1 squared is 1, but because of the negative in front of the x, it's still a -1. Plus 5 is 4. 0 squared is 0. 0 has no negative. Plus 5 is 5. And 1 squared is 1. The negative in front of the x makes it -1. Plus 5 is 4. So you see that it mirrors. And we plot those points. We have -1, 4, 0, 5, and 1, 4. We connect those as a parabola. I didn't do a very good job of getting them through the points, but with a pencil you should be able to. And this is what we call a reflection in the x-axis because it's upside down now. The negative makes it a reflection in the x-axis. And it is an upward translation. Because now the vertex is above the x-axis. You'll also have a question similar to number 3. A cross-section of the parabolic glass mirror of the Hubble Space Telescope can be modeled by the graph of the function y equals 0.0043 x squared, where x and y are measured in meters. Find the domain and range of the function for in the situation. So let's start with domain. Domain refers to the x values, and the x values go from left to right. Now, this particular graph does not have arrows on the ends, meaning that this is where it starts and this is where it stops. So it starts at -1.2. So -1.2 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to positive 1.2. because it goes from This is 1.2 here, negative 1.2, and this is positive 1.2. And that's your domain. Your range, on the other hand, refers to the y values. And so in this case, the y values start as low as 0. And again, there's no arrows on this, so it only goes as high as this. Okay, so for your range, you're going to have 0 for your least amount is less than or equal to y, which is less than or equal to, and that top point right here is 0.006. In questions 4 through 5, you will be finding the axis of symmetry and the vertex of the graph of the function. To start with, to find the axis of symmetry, you're going to find x equals negative b over 2a. So let's find that one for number 4. On number 4, b is 8, so it's negative 8 over 2 times negative 2, which is negative 8 over negative 4, which is a positive 2. So the axis of symmetry on number 4 is positive 2. So we say, as an answer, we answer it x equals 2. Then, to find the vertex of the graph, you're going to take that 2 and substitute it back into the entire equation. So you're going to have y equals negative 2 times 2 squared plus 8 times 2 plus 3. 2 squared is 4, and negative 2 times 4 is negative 8, plus 8 times 2 is 16, plus 3. And when you simplify that, negative 8 plus 16 is 8, and 8 plus 3 is 11. And so the vertex is an ordered pair, which you'll use the 2 that you found as x, and then the 11, which you found as your y. So your vertex is 2, 11. And we will do the same things for 5 and 6. So I'm going to box the formula that we use for each one of them. This is all the work for 4. Let's now do the work for 5. So it's negative b over 2a. Negative 2 is b. So negative 2 is a negative of negative 2. And the a is 1/2, so over 2 times 1/2. So the negative of negative 2 is a positive 2, and 2 times 1/2 is 1. That simplifies to 2. So for number 5, it's for number 4. For number 5, x equals 2. That's your axis of symmetry. And then we substitute that back in. Y equals 1/2 times 2 squared minus 2 times 2 plus 5. 2 squared is 4, and half of 4 is 2. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4, so minus 4 plus 5. 2 minus 4 is negative 2, plus 5 is a positive 3. So the ordered pair for number 5 is 2 from the x that we already found, and the 3 for the y that we just found. And that is your answer for number 5. And then for number 6, we'll do all the work for 6 down here. X equals, this one has no b. It goes straight from x squared to a 7. The b is what is in front of the x. So this is going to be a negative 0. That right there, even though I'm going to put in the a, we're going to get 0. So for number 6, the axis of symmetry is x equals 0. And then to plug that back in, you get y equals 6 times 0 squared plus 7. All of that becomes 0. You get y equals 7. So the ordered pair is 0, 7. And that is the answer for 6. Questions 6 through 8 will be set up very similarly to this problem. A basketball player shoots a basketball with an initial vertical velocity of 16 feet per second from a height of 4 feet. First, we are to write an equation that gives the basketball's height as a function of the time in seconds after it is shot. And we will use the initial vertical velocity formula, which is in blue, to help us set up that equation. And so our equation will be h equals negative 16t squared plus the vt. Our v stands for the initial velocity. Well, the initial velocity was 16, so it's plus 16t. And then s, the original height, the starting height, is 4. So that's the equation that we're looking for. The second part says, after how many seconds does the basketball reach its maximum height? To find maximum height, you would want to use what we were just practicing a minute ago, finding the axis of symmetry and then plugging that back in to find its actual highest point in the parabola. So we're going to use negative b over 2a, and we're going to say that equals t this time because t is our x in this situation. So our b is 16, so that's going to be negative 16 over 2 times a is negative 16, so 2 times negative 16. So that's negative 16 over a negative 32, which gives us 1/2. So our t is 1/2 in this case, and then we substitute that back in to the equation. So it's h equals negative 16 times 1/2 squared plus 16 times 1/2 plus 4. So 1/2 squared is 1/4, and negative 16 times 1/4 is negative 4. 16 times 1/2 is 8 plus 4. Well, the 4's actually cancel each other out, so we get that h equals 8. So it says, after how many seconds does the basketball reach its maximum height? We actually didn't need to find the h, but the maximum height, we went ahead and did this, actually goes with this part of the problem. After how many seconds? It's 1/2 second. And then its maximum height is 8 feet. In questions 9 through 10, you will be solving the equation using the graph. You can use your graphing calculator for this, but you do need to graph the graph on your paper, and your answer is going to be where this crosses the x-axis, because that is solving that for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set up an xy table here. And we will pick some of the normals, like we'll pick 0, 1, actually we'll pick 2, and I'm going to cheat a little bit and pick a negative 7, so that way you have the exact ones that we need. But again, you can use your graphing calculator. When we substitute a 0 in, 0 squared plus 5 times 0 minus 14, that's going to give you 0, or negative 14, because those cancel out. You're left with negative 14. For 2, you're going to have 2 squared plus 5 times 2 minus 14, and that gives you 4 plus 10 is 14, minus 14 is 0. So it's 2, 0, and then we'll do the same thing with negative 7. Negative 7 squared plus 5 times negative 7 minus 14. Well, negative 7 squared is 49 minus 35 minus 14. And negative 49 minus 35 is 14, and 14 minus 14 is 0. So when I graph this, 0, negative 14, which is about right there. Very difficult to graph on this. 2, 0 should be right there. And negative 7, 0, which is about right there. And the vertex is actually going to be closer to negative 3, 20. And draw in the rest of it. And then your solutions are where it crosses the x-axis at 2 and negative 7. And then for number 9, we'll do approximately the same thing. Set up an XY table. Again, I'm going to pick the answers that are about right. We're going to use -1. We'll go ahead and plug in a 0. And 4. And so that's going to be the negative of -1 squared plus 3 times -1 plus 4. So -1 squared is 1, but that's a -1. That's going to become a -3 and a plus 4. So that's -4 plus 4 is 0. For 0, -0 squared plus 3 times 0 plus 4, those all become 0, so you're left with just a 4. And then 4 is -4 squared plus 3 times 4 plus 4. And that's going to give you -16 plus 12 plus 4. -16 plus 12 is -4, and -4 plus 4 is 0. And so when I plot those, I have -1, 0, 0, 4, 4, 0. And my vertex is at approximately 1.5, 7.25 is where it appears to be. Or 6.25. About right there. And then you draw on your parabola, and your answer is -1 and 4, because those are where they cross the x-axis. On questions 11 through 13, you will be solving the equation, rounding the solutions to the nearest hundredth if necessary. It doesn't specifically say how you have to solve the equation. You could do this by graphing on your calculator, or you could do it algebraically, and that's how I'm going to do these 3. So for number 10, we have 16t squared minus 9 equals 0. I'm going to start by adding 9 to both sides, which is going to leave me with 16t squared equals 9. Then I will divide both sides by 16. 16's cancel out. T squared equals 9 over 16. And then to take the square root of both sides on a fraction like this is actually pretty simple. You're just going to take the square root of the top and the bottom. And this is going to be a plus or minus. The square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of 16 is 4. So your two answers are positive 3/4 and negative 3/4. Number 11, you need to do somewhat differently. You actually, before you can work all this out, you need to do, if you're going to do this algebraically, you need to square, or rather, you can, there's multiple ways you can do this one. You can actually do this one by dividing both sides by 2 to start with. And so you have x minus 6 squared equals 12. Then you could take the square root of both sides. If you take the square root of this side, you're left with x minus 6 equals the square root of 12. Okay, and that's a positive or negative. Then to finish answering your question, you're going to add 6 to both sides. When you add 6 over here, it goes away. When you add 6 to the other side, you're left with two answers. You're left with the square root of 12 plus 6, or the square root of 12, the negative square root of 12 plus 6. And so those are your two answers. For number 12, you can add 13 to both sides, which will give you 4n squared equals negative 7. Divide both sides by 4, which leaves you with n squared equals negative 7 over 4. And then take the square root of both sides, which will leave you with n equals, and on this one, if you notice, it says the square root of negative 7 over 4. You cannot take the square root of a negative, making number 12 no solution. For number 14, find the radius of a circle whose area is 144 pi square inches. To answer this one, we first need to define what area is for a circle. Well, area equals pi times radius squared. And we want to make sure that we have in our formula what we're looking for, which is radius. Well, the area is 144 pi equals pi times the radius squared. Well, we can divide the pi out of each side. Those are gone from both sides, making 144 equal to the radius squared. This is the square root of 144. And since we're dealing with dimensions here, the radius that we're looking for is 12 inches. For number 15, this question is not exactly as it will appear on your test, but this is a describe and correct the error type of question on your test. But we're going to go through this problem. It'll be similar to the problem that you see on your test. Complete the steps to solve the equation x squared minus 8x minus 3 equals 0 by completing the square. The first thing you want to do in completing the square is you actually want to get the c by itself on the right side. So we'll have x squared minus 8x equals a positive 3, because that negative 3 moved to the other side becomes a positive 3. Then we look at the 8 in the middle, and we're going to take half of that and square it. So half of 8 is 4, and 4 squared is 16. So what you're going to have here is x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 3 plus 16. So we half the b and multiply it and square it. Simplified, but what that allows us to do over here. Okay, and notice that actually simplifies to 19, which is what we have right here. Then for this part, you will have x minus 4 squared equals 19. Okay, we know this because in the middle it's a minus 8, so we know we have to have a minus sign as we are as we're solving this. We have to have the minus sign in there. The square root of 16 is 4, so it's x minus 4, and then negative 4 plus negative 4 is negative 8, and then all of that equals 19, and that should have a squared there. Then I take the square root of both sides, which leaves me with x minus 4 equals the square root of 19. And then finally, to complete solving it, I'm going to add 4 to the other side, so it's going to be x equals, and this is positive or negative 19. It's going to be a positive 4 plus or minus the square root of 19. So the question that you will receive on your test will be a describe and correct the error question. In questions 15 through 17, you will need to use the quadratic formula to solve the equation, rounding the solutions to the nearest hundredth if necessary. So what we need to do in each one of those is you need to know what a, b, and c are in order for you to use the quadratic formula. So in number 15, a is 1, because it's 1p squared. You don't see the 1, but it's there. B is 8, and c is negative 15. And so we substitute those values into the quadratic formula, which is here. So x equals 8, negative 8, plus or minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 15. All of that divided by 2 times 1. And so to solve this, you might want to take it piece by piece. We'll take underneath the square root symbol to start with. 8 squared is 64. Minus 4 is 64 minus, this is going to give you a positive 60. So 64 minus 60 is 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So that leaves you with negative 8 plus or minus 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and simplify the bottom. 2 times 1 is 2. So let's start with the plus. Negative 8 plus 2 is negative 6. And negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. So x can equal negative 3. Or we can subtract. Negative 8 minus 2 is negative 10. Negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. And so for 15, those are my two answers. We'll do the same thing on 16. Define our A, B, and our C. A is 2, B is negative 7, and that 10 needs to come over here. It was positive on the right side. When we move it over, it becomes a negative 10. So it's going to be x equals negative 7. The negative of negative 7 is 7. So 7 plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 7 squared is 49, minus 4 times a times c. 4 times 2 is 8, times negative 10 is negative 80. So minus a negative 80 becomes a plus 80. And all of that's going to be divided by 2 times 2, which is 4. So then I look at, under the square root symbols, 49 plus 80 gives you 129. So you're going to have 7 plus the square root of 129, all of that divided by 4, or 7 minus the square root of 129, all of that divided by 4. And it says to round your solutions to the nearest hundredth. So you actually want to type this into your calculator and get an answer. And when typing these into a calculator, you should get a 4.59 when rounding to the nearest hundredth, 4.59, or a negative 1.09 as your two answers. And then number 17. We define all of our parts. A equals 9, B equals 12, C equals 4. And so we substitute all of that into a quadratic formula. Got ahead of myself here. So x equals negative b. So negative 12 plus or minus the square root of, b squared is 144, and then minus 4 times a times c. 4 times a is 36, and 36 times 4 is 144. Interesting, because that's going to become 0, but we're still going to divide all of that by 2a, so that's 2 times 9 is 18. This becomes 0, so in effect what happens is all of this is gone. Square root of 0 is 0. So you actually only have one answer here, and that is x equals negative 12 over 18. And when you work that out, you get negative 0.067, because you do need to round. And that question only had one solution. Number 19 will pretty much be a simple plug a number in and solve it problem. During the period 1998 to 2002, the number y in millions of juvenile books shipped to bookstores can be modeled by the equation y equals negative 15x squared plus 64x plus 360, where x is the number of years since 1998. In what year were there 400 million juvenile books shipped to bookstores? We're going to take that 400 and substitute it in for the y. So 400 equals negative 15x squared plus 64x plus 360. I'm going to subtract 400 from both sides. That's going to leave me with 0 on the left side, so that I'm set up to solve it. Equals negative 15x squared plus 64x. And then 360 minus 400 is negative 40. At this point, you have several different methods that you can use to solve it. For numbers that are large like this, I would actually try the calculator and see what it would give me if I graph it. And after plugging this into a graphing calculator, I see that it crosses the x-axis at about 3.5. But when the question is asking in what year were there 400 million juvenile books shipped, that would be in the third year. So that would be 1998 is 0, 99 is 1, 2000 is 2, and then 2001 is 3. And so our answer for that one will be in the year 2001. For questions 20 through 22 on your test, you have to decide whether the equation has 2 solutions, 1 solution, or no solutions. And we do this by calculating what the discriminant is. And we find the discriminant through this simple equation, b squared minus 4ac. And then, going back to section 10.7, whether it's greater than 0, equal to 0, or less than 0, tells us how many solutions that there are. So for the first one, b squared, that's negative 3 squared, minus 4 times 3 times 4. That gives me 9. And then negative 4 times 3 times 4 is going to give me a minus 48. That's going to give me a negative when I subtract that. And when it's negative, when it's less than 0, there is no solution. For the next one, we have negative 2 squared minus 4 times negative 1. So that's going to give me 4, and all of this together is going to give me a positive 16. So it's going to be plus 16. It's going to be a 20, which is greater than 0. That means there are 2 solutions. And for the last one, we have 12 squared minus 4 times 9. That's 144. And then 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times 9 is 144, so it's going to be minus 144, which is 0. And when it's equal to 0, there is 1 solution. And you might want to refer back to the first chart that you see in section 10.7 notes. And to finish out the test, we are to decide whether the function presented to us is linear, exponential, or quadratic. Number 4 on this part gives you that U-shaped parabola, making it a quadratic function. Number 7 is a straight line, making it a linear function. And 8 is a decreasing function, making it exponential. And this concludes your Chapter 7 test review. You may use this review on your test.